Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. I'm here to tell you about Boll & Branch and how you can discover this new level of softness with their iconic sheets. In a recent customer survey, 96% responded that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. They source the rarest 100% organic cotton for an incredible softness to start. Then they skip the toxins and harsh chemicals for a natural feel unlike anything else, and it all comes together with their signature weave. This special design feels buttery, breathable, and unlocks new levels of softness with every wash, and they stand behind their promise of softness. With their 30-night guarantee, you can wash, style, and sleep in their sheets for an entire month. If during the 30 nights, you don't love your sheets or feel them getting softer and softer, you can send them right back. No questions asked. So head to bollandbranch.com for 15% off your first order with code Odyssey. That's BOLL and branch.com. Exclusions apply. See site for details.
I'm Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com.
And I'm Scott Chasen with Fog.net.
This is a replay of WIBW's TV show, The Drive.
Here's this week's episode on the 24/7 Sports Podcast Network.
Good evening, Wildcat and Jayhawk fans, and welcome to The Drive, sponsored by FlintHillsAuto.com. I am Tim Fitzgerald at GoPowerCat.com, and the man to my right is Scott Chasen of Fog.net. And Scott, your tan from time in Ames looks incredible.
Thank you very much. You know, I heard a riddle in Ames that I'd like to pass along to you.
Here we go.
Yeah, so I'm just curious, what's better, an ugly win or a pretty loss? Because the adjectives are kind of confusing me on that one.
The ugly win is always better.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay. That's probably not great for one of the two teams we talk about a lot on this show.
Yeah, well, it was a pretty loss for KU, I can tell you that. You can interact with us on social media at facebook.com/The Drive Show, on Twitter at The Drive 13, and of course, answer our weekly poll questions. I got lost. And make your game predictions at thedriveshow.com. And remember, if you ever miss an episode of The Drive, you can listen to an audio-only version that will appear each Monday morning in the form of a podcast at GoPowerCat.com and Fog.net. And we start things off with our 2-minute drill. The 2-minute drill sponsored by Houlihan's. They've been expecting you. Now, let's eat.
Well, K-State picked up its 7th victory of the season with a 30-27 victory at Texas Tech. Fitz, how did K-State break its 2-game losing streak?
Man, they won. That's how they did it. I really, as that game progressed, I was really worried Kansas State was kind of falling into what Texas Tech wanted. This game was 6-3 at halftime, and then all you know what broke loose is both teams scored 24 points in the second half, and I really thought that was playing into Texas Tech's shootout mentality, go fast, score a lot of points, their comfort zone. But Kansas State was able to answer offensively and then play just good enough defense to get it done during the course of this game. And the Red Raiders piled up a lot of yardage, but not the points to accompany it, which is pretty incredible. And then Joshua Youngblood did his thing again with a remarkable kickoff return in which he read a block for a good 30 yards until he got around the guy for a touchdown, and then got a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for apparently what was not that big of a dance, and it cost him 15 yards, and Tech came right back down and scored, which really turned this into the shootout that you didn't want. But Kansas State was able to kind of muster the strength and find a way to get things done, and Skylar Thompson just really took advantage of a really bad Tech secondary, and Sebastian Taylor finally made a breakout for Kansas State, and which was good to see because he's a big athletic target who hasn't always been on the same page with everyone else in the offense, which, by the way, is important that you're running the same play. But this was a good win for Kansas State. Getting number 7 gets them over the 500 mark for the season. They will be that way at season's end no matter what happens down the stretch here. And it really says a lot about what Chris Kleiman's doing in Manhattan, that he can get this program to 7 wins with essentially a watered-down version of the roster. Yeah, there's some additions from last year, but there's some big subtractions too. A team that went 5-7 last year is 7-4 this year going into that game with Iowa State.
Yeah, well, I just thought the composure from Kansas State was impressive. They obviously allowed that late touchdown. I think it was a 4th down play, a long touchdown down the right sideline. I think had the penalty on top of that. And look, Kansas State got the ball back in a scenario where you knew you needed to get a 1st down, maybe 2, to win the game, put it on ice. Fitz, I thought it was impressive how they handled that situation.
They finished the game with 4 injured defensive secondary players. So they were missing their starting corners and their top 2 nickelbacks. And on that long play you mentioned, they had their 3rd nickelback in. And they had a nice conversation, Coach and Lance Robinson, almost like, you got this? Yeah, I got this. He didn't have it. But he played a great game other than that.
We have those conversations too.
Exactly. The KU football offense returned to its explosive form against Iowa State. It was almost like Brent Dearman was calling plays and even led the Cyclones in the 4th quarter. Scott, did you learn anything about the Jayhawks this weekend?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we all learned watching this game was that Les Miles' talk after the last game about specifically individual improvement, that it did not fall on deaf ears. I think the players were fired up. They were energized. And, yeah, the play calling looked a little bit better after that first drive. I think KU had 7 scoring opportunities when you count field goal attempts and then obviously touchdowns. But Les Miles challenged the team after Oklahoma State. The impression that I got coming off that loss, it was a 31-13 game with both KU touchdowns being scored in the 4th quarter, was that Les Miles was not happy, maybe not quite with the effort, maybe not quite with the execution, but something. There was something missing that all season he had talked about, being impressed with this team, that they're going to win games, that they're going to be good down the line. It felt like something was missing that game, and I sensed a little bit of frustration just during the week from Les Miles that, we really haven't seen throughout the year. This was the response by Kansas. And look, the Jayhawks got down early. They really only hung in the game in the first half because they got a few field goals. They made 3 out of 4 in the first half, which was good enough for kicker Liam Jones, even though they were all less than 40 yards. And yeah, down the stretch in the second half, Carter Stanley just got on fire. He was connecting on deep balls. He was making all the reads that you would want him to make. And again, I thought it was funny. It might have been a couple weeks ago that KU called a bunch of quarterback runs early because the thought was, well, Carter Stanley typically does better when he gets hit a couple times, he gets into the flow of the game, which traditionally has been the case. However, you can't manufacture it. You can't fake it. You can't just call a quarterback dive, send him up the middle, and then say, okay, now you're in the flow of the game. I thought this was a much more organic way to do it. I thought the play calling, again, especially in the second half, but I mean, really in that first half, they were on knocking on the door of the red zone or in the red zone multiple times. Again, kicked 4 field goals, I think all of them less than 40 yards, so obviously they were in a position to score. Now it's just about finishing things off. They got the game against Baylor to do it, but no, I thought it was an impressive effort.
And an important topic here, I love the uniforms. I love the all whites, except for the weird silver paint on the back of the helmet. Like they decided to add a little spray paint.
Yeah, I've never been a fan of the all whites. I think they look like kind of like marshmallows. I forgot the word for a second there.
Lovely. I like marshmallows.
Yeah.
Let's move to the Big 12. Baylor and Oklahoma both won on Saturday, and despite both having a game this week, they will play for the Big 12 title in 2 weeks. That's how far ahead they are. Scott, is this the matchup, and can Baylor beat Oklahoma this time? Can they win all 4 quarters instead of just 2?
Well, I was going to say maybe if they take what would it be, 31-3 or 41-3 or 51. I mean, here's what's going to happen. No matter what goes on coming into this game, Oklahoma is going to be playing with all the confidence in the world, right? Because maybe they already feel like they're the big bad Oklahoma, they're the class of the Big 12, and now they have this example of a game that they were completely outclassed in early and still found a way to win. I think Oklahoma is in a great position in terms of maybe even having a chance to get back into the playoff conversation with the way some of the results went this weekend. And look, Baylor has a bit of a shout too if it can, I guess, make it to the finish line and still be in that position with only 1 loss. But look, I think this game is going to be a lot of fun. I think it'll end up being a bit of a chess match with what each team maybe shows. I guess in this game down the stretch, I don't know if you save things, how you kind of make it work. But look, it's going to be a lot of fun. I think these are maybe the best 2 teams in the Big 12. Iowa State kind of let me down this last week against Kansas, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, they're clearly the best teams. And what I find curious here is, what if Baylor beats Oklahoma in the Big 12 championship? Baylor will go to the, there's New Year's 6 bowls as the conference champion, but does a 2-loss Oklahoma stand a chance of sneaking into one of those games as an at-large and then get 2 teams for the conference in it? I don't think a Baylor with 2 losses would get in, particularly, if they lost that last game. But I think Oklahoma with 2 losses, they have different rules. When you name Oklahoma, Texas, Ohio State, Alabama, you have different rules. I think they might sneak in.
Yeah, I was going to say, we keep going. You could list like 6 SEC schools and get it on that list. But no, and look, At the end of the day, these are the teams that did you can argue about how they got there. You can argue about, Baylor played a bunch of close games, and should they have won this, should they not have won this? I think they clearly separated themselves, at least in terms of results. So at the very least, you're getting the two teams that deserve to be there.
You know what every win has in common?
I do not.
You won.
Oh.
You won.
Maybe I did know that one, actually.
It goes in that one column, and it doesn't matter if it's by a point or 50. That's wisdom for me. Now, a quick look at your poll question results. And poll questions are brought to you by Film at 11, your go fast, look good, play hard custom shop.
Well, last week's question was, and it was a doozy, Kansas State has lost 2 games in a row to drop to 6-4 in the season with 2 games to play at Texas Tech and Iowa State at home. What will the Wildcats' record be at season's end? And you see the results here.
Are smart. Our viewers know what's going on.
Yeah, well, 10% going 6-6. Sorry, you're already wrong. 8-4, 40%, 50% at 7-5. I think they like that middle option.
Here is this week's question. How will KU basketball fare at the Maui Invitational? A, win the event. B, come in second. C, lose before the championship game. Vote at thedriveshow.com. Scott is not in Maui. No. He's here.
I'm here. The Maui of the Midwest, as it's
called.
That's
Ames.
Yeah. Oh, Ames. Yeah, you're right. That's why I'm so tan now. Hey, Michigan State, Kansas, potential championship game matchup.
That's not bad.
Yeah.
Hawaii, Michigan State, Kansas. And we're here together.
Well, that will do it for this half of the 2-minute drill, but we will be right back with more on KU and K-State on The Drive.
Getting the crew together isn't as easy as it used to be. We get it. Life comes at you fast. But trust us, your pals are desperate for a good hang. And when they hear you stock the party with drinks from Drizzly, they'll be banging down your door. Let Drizzly, the go-to app for drink delivery, take care of the supplies. All you need is an excuse. It doesn't even have to be a good one. It's your dog's birthday. The loquats are finally ripe. Whatever. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on a massive selection of beer, wine, and spirits and get them delivered straight to your door, which means you can entice the crew to leave their houses without ever leaving yours. Whatever the occasion, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today. Must be 21 plus, not available in all locations.
Welcome back to The Drive as we continue our weekly 2-minute drill. 2-minute drill sponsored by Hula Hands. They've been expecting you. Now let's eat.
Well, with Saturday's victory, Kansas State now has 7 wins with 1 game to play. But is there any clarity about the Wildcats' bowl destination?
No, and actually the win kind of muddied things up a little bit. You know, there's really 4 bowls in play. Unless somehow, as we mentioned in the first segment, if the Big 12 gets 2 teams in those New Year 6 bowls, everything shifts up. But in all likelihood, the winner of that championship game goes into the New Year 6. The loser will go to the Alamo Bowl. And that leaves the Camping World, Texas, Liberty, and Cheez-It Bowl. Yes, the Cheez-It Bowl for the next 4 teams, which are Texas, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, and Kansas State. So those 4 teams, depending on what they do this weekend, it'll all kind of, snap into place. The wild card is this, is that the bowls aren't obligated to take anyone in any order. If they have a pecking order that they pick in, but once they're on the board, if a team's bowl eligible, they can pick them. So it's entirely possible, let's say the Camping World, which is considered the 3rd bowl spot in the Big 12, even if Texas would lose to Texas Tech and end up 6-6, in theory, the Camping World, if they got Notre Dame as their other team, could take Texas in the matchup with Notre Dame, which would stink for everyone else who might have an 8-win season and not get the best bowl spot. But Texas is Texas, and they get a lot of viewers apparently, or so they say. Yeah. So really, in all likelihood, even if Kansas State wins, it's entirely possible they will end up in the Liberty Bowl. They could slide up into the Texas Bowl, and with a loss at 7-5, they'll probably slide down into the Cheez-It Bowl. There's one more bowl, the First Responders Bowl, and TCU, if it can win, would get into that with 6 wins.
That's a lot of bowls, a lot to pick from.
There's 7 slots, and TCU would be the 7th team if they get their 6th win.
Yeah, I just wanted to to ask you, I mean, think about where this team was, where everything was coming into the season. I mean, if you would have told people around this program that, hey, you're going to have 7 wins going into your last game, I mean, this program was picked, what, 9th in the Big 12? What do you think the I guess, reaction would have been?
You know, it's funny. The over-under in Vegas at the start of the season was 5.5 wins for Kansas State. I thought they'd get 6. Maybe I was a little optimistic even at that, you know, and have the chance to be 8 wins in the regular season, 9 with the bowl win is absolutely incredible. It's amazing. And yet there's some frustration amongst the fans because it didn't quite make sense how they got there. They beat the likes of Mississippi State and Oklahoma, and then they've lost some games they didn't think they'd lose, including West Virginia at home. So that's what it's
the way it goes.
Yep. Well, KU basketball is out in Hawaii for the Maui Invitational. Scott, what can the Jayhawks get out of this tournament besides a few wins?
Well, wins are obviously going to be the biggest thing late in the year, but I think there are a lot of questions right now with Kansas basketball. I think the power forward spot, the 4 spot, it's a position that's become, I mean, largely obsolete in basketball, especially at the professional level. When you look at the number of teams that play small and go small ball and 4 guard, but at the same time, Kansas is trying to buck that trend because of the players on the roster. David McCormick has been impressive this year. He has been a better rebounder than he was as a freshman. He has done more offensively than he did as a freshman, which obviously to be expected. It's hard to come into college basketball as a freshman, even when you're a McDonald's All-American and a high 4-star recruit. Silvio De Sousa, conversely, has had the energy, showed in his freshman year in the back half of the season that he had the ability to play and stay on the court with lottery picks. He did it against Duke in the Elite Eight, but at the same time, it was a challenge. He had times where he would be inconsistent. He had times where he would throw the ball away, or times where Bill Self would not be able to trust him. Now, what you saw a little bit ago was that Bill Self put him on the court for the last 5 minutes and 45 seconds of a game that he believed against ETSU was in contention, a team that he called good multiple times after the game. He wanted to see what Silvio De Sousa would do down the stretch, and by all accounts, De Sousa passed the test. He even had a sequence, I think, where he had a steal and then a dunk and then a block, just one after the other, and that block actually came on a 3-point shot. So I think the biggest thing for Kansas right now is figuring out, as you play some of these good teams, BYU and UCLA, they'll take on one of those two after they likely defeat Chaminade, who is the first game of that tournament. Before
Chaminade.
Maybe Michigan State in the end, but in the championship game, you're going to get to see against some decent to good to potentially great competition. How does it look when KU plays with 2 big? How do these different teams kind of match up against the Jayhawks, and are they able to play the way that college basketball 5 years ago, even 10 years ago, certainly, that you would have looked at and said, wow, that roster is absolutely stacked for the way this sport is. Now things have changed a little bit. I think this will be a great opportunity for them. 3 games to kind of prove that they can do it.
It amazes me. You can only go to this tournament, I think, once every 4 years. And yet it feels like KU goes every year. It feels like they go all the time. And KU fans get to go to Maui, including my brother and sister-in-law, and have a good time. Kansas State is playing in Fort Myers.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, nothing wrong with Fort Myers. It's not Maui, but it's Fort Myers.
Well, hey, KU played, I think it was Indiana and Hawaii a few years back, so maybe that's why it feels like they go to Maui so much, because they find ways around it.
Now we're going to step out of bounds.
Well, Arizona State beat Oregon and Ohio State beat Penn State, basically eliminating the losers from college football playoff contention. Alabama, meanwhile, beat Western Carolina in one of those cushy SEC November non-conference games. So, Fitz, why does the SEC get away with this scheduling?
I remember a few years ago when someone in the Big 12 beat someone else in the Big 12 late, and they didn't do it by enough, so the committee dropped them.
I think it was TCU.
Yeah. Right? And yet the SEC can play these games. It's crazy. I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. There's an obvious solution, but the SEC is too cowardly to do it, which is change to 9 conference games. I mean, it's crazy that they're still playing 4 non-conference games, including these just ridiculous contests in November that nobody wants to see. And if the SEC is such a valuable TV commodity, why aren't the networks, the rights holders, demanding that they play 9 conference games? And then don't turn around and say, because we're 14 teams, we don't see some opponents in the East and West every time a comet comes around. It just is crazy. Just go play 9 games. And Alabama, go play someone in the non-conference. And I don't want to hear nobody will play you, because I guarantee you teams will play you. You just don't want to go to their venue. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Kansas State would play you. Well, maybe not.
Yeah.
But Kansas State would likely take that home and have Alabama and Manhattan, absolutely. But you won't do it. You know that's true. Play 9 games, play someone in the non-conference, and I say this, the committee should go to a point system that for every game under 10 of Power 5 opponents that you play, you get docked. It would solve a lot of problems.
You have to do something because, look, at the end of the day, whether it's a neutral field or whether you schedule an opponent 20 years out, I know Kansas and Virginia play, I think in 2030 and 2029, and you can't really account for whatever. Look, what we've learned watching these committees is that you kind of get away with playing no one because you don't want to risk that loss. And even if you beat a team by just a couple points, a good team, or you beat a bad team by 70, the committee at times, especially with the SEC, has weighed that kind of the same way. Now, teams that don't have that name brand, they haven't gotten that same benefit. I do think it's an issue for college football, something they have to figure out, because it feels wrong to say that Alabama shouldn't be in there, because we both know Alabama is typically one of the best 4 teams in college football, no matter what. That being said, you have to find a way to.
And they really haven't beaten anyone of substance. I think the best win's Texas A&M.
Well, now let's hear from the fans. Our fan question this week is:
It drives me crazy, not me personally, this is the person saying this. It drives me crazy watching Carter Stanley. How can he score, and he didn't actually score, 48 points at Texas, 3 points against Kansas, and 31 against Iowa State? Mary in Baldwin City demands answers, and Scott Chasen has the answer.
Well, bonus points for being right about the 3 versus the 10, because Manny Miles scored that last touchdown late against Kansas State. It's kind of crazy. I think a lot of it is tied to play calling, and that's not just to say when Les Miles does X, Y, and Z, the offense falters, because Les Miles is not calling every down, he's not calling every plays, but I think it's capitalizing on the right opportunities, not mixing things up, not running plays that are predictable basically in 3rd and short and goal line scenarios. What did Kansas have success with against Iowa State? Well, they stretched the field, and I think they had one time, it was something like a 3rd and 3 right by the goal line. They lined up with one of those heavy set formations where you think, oh boy, Les Miles is called to run up the middle, and what do? They fake it and they throw it to a fullback who has never caught a pass in practice from Carter Stanley. That kind of creativity is why Carter Stanley had a ton of praise for Brent Dearman after this game. He called his play calling phenomenal and unbelievable, and while I'd like to think that was an earnest compliment, I think that may have been in part a statement of him saying, hey, here's the guy I want calling the plays for me.
Remember to ask us your questions at our Facebook page and on Twitter at The Drive 13. And when we return, we look at your predictions here on The Drive. I don't want to do it, but we will.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing, however you cha-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business. From the launch your online shop stage, to the first real-life store stage, all the way to the did we just hit 1 million orders stage. Shopify's here to help you grow. Whether you're selling scented soap or offering outdoor outfits, Shopify helps you sell everywhere. From their all-in-one e-commerce platform to their in-person POS system, wherever and whatever you're selling, Shopify's got you covered. Shopify helps you turn browsers into buyers with the internet's best converting checkout. 15% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms. And sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star. Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US. And Shopify is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. Plus, Shopify's award-winning 24/7 help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/Odyssey Podcast.
Welcome back as we head down the home stretch of this week's show. Now it's time to look at our predictions. The predictions are brought to you by Vanderbilt, your work boot center. And remember to make your weekly predictions at thedriveshow.com. Here are last week's results. Only I could possibly go 2-1 and lose ground further.
Good week for everyone.
Everyone went 3-0 except me, and I stink. Now, this week's picks start with, and what's interesting is all three road teams are favorites in their picks. Baylor at 14.5-point favorite at Kansas. Will Baylor cover 14.5? Win by 15 or more? I say yes.
I think I'll take Baylor too on this one.
Okay.
Well, next is Iowa State minus 3.5 at K-State. I like Iowa State here too. I'm going with the favorites on the road.
They always play close games, so it's entirely possible Iowa State wins by 3 and K-State covers that, so I'm going to take the Cats. And our last game of the week is Oklahoma, a 12.5-point favorite at Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma does it.
Hey, rivalry games, usually closer. Give me Oklahoma State.
Very good. Again, make your picks over at thedriveshow.com. And now it's time for our On the Clock segment. On the Clock is sponsored by Carpet One. Buy local for a strong and local community. And we start with Scott Chasen.
Well, each year there's a freshman in college basketball, or maybe on one of the local teams not ranked as a 5-star, that emerges as one of those special guys you could see turning into something down the line. And Tristan Enaruna looks like that for Kansas this year. His defensive potential, had 4 steals last game to go along with 4 rebounds, 4 assists, 4 points, a bunch of 4s. But been impressed with what I've seen from Tristan Enaruna, so wanted to mention.
Let's talk about freshmen at K-State. They have 3 really good ones, and they will be playing next week in the Rocket Mortgage Quicken Loan Fort Myers Classic. That's right, the Rocket Mortgage Quicken Loan Fort Myers Classic. And Montavious Murphy really has piqued my interest. I'm not sure he'll be available to play. He's a little bit dinged up, but K-State is kind of struggling, winning but struggling. I say just go let the 3 freshmen play and get better while you do it. And that's it for this week's edition of The Drive. We will see you next week right here and all week on social media.
With Blue Link Plus, you can access your Hyundai Tucson Limited remotely. Doors unlocked, temperature set, lost car found.
There it is.
Get complimentary class-leading Blue Link Plus. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.